Hello, guys, and welcome into the C Team Pod. And man, we have a fantastic show today. I know you're noticing that there's no Dallas next to me. Dallas he's having some struggles with work in terms of his schedule. He's working all the time. He's killing it. He's doing exactly what he loves to do. So we're going to grind through some of these, team reviews as we reveal our team power rankings. For right now, if you can see in the title, it's the Atlanta Falcons that we have at number 29. But I'm not going to do the show just by myself. I'm going to bring in my one of my good friends and person who's on the bolt with me, and that's Steezy A Smith.
I was on mute. But yo, what's going on, Emmitt? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Lovely. Thanks for asking.
Of course. No, it's I'm excited to do these. I mean, I've been trying to get someone, a Falcons beat writer or something like that to get on in here. We've had some struggles, so I'm very happy that you're in here to sub for him, sub for Dallas. It's going to be a fantastic show, but this is not the first and only show I'm doing today. I'm doing this right here, right now, obviously. Then at 3:30, you can see Steezy A. You can see Dylan. Well, no Dylan today, but you can see Squabo as well on the Bolt at 3:30 Pacific Standard Time. And then at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, it's going to be me, and there's a Chicago Bears. He's a beat reporter for Chicago and NBC Chicago. There we are. And I'm very happy to have him joining us to talk Bears. Again, Bears are going to be our team 28. Spoiler alert. But for right now, we're going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons and what we're going to talk about today. So coming up, after we talk about what happened last season, what did we think of the Falcons free agency and draft? Is Arthur Smith, their head coach, on the hot seat? What do we make of the Falcons quarterback situation? And finally, a Falcons record prediction by my fantastic guest, Steezy A Smith. But yeah, as I said, 29th on the power rankings is the Atlanta Falcons. Steezy, what do you think went wrong for them last year?
Man, where do I even start, right? And no disrespect, but that Atlanta Falcons team, I know they kind of stumbled their way to a 7-10 record, but they overachieved by a mile. I mean, that team was just absolutely bereft of talent on both sides of the ball. Offensively, they didn't have Calvin Ridley for much of the year. They didn't have much of a ground game. I think if I'm looking at this correctly, the rushing offense was second to last in the NFL with 1,451 total yards as a team. And so we saw Jonathan Taylor rush for over 1,800. We saw, who else? Derrick Henry almost eclipse 1,000 in half a year. And so the Atlanta Falcons offensively, they were just putrid. They were missing Calvin Ridley. Even defensively, they just had a whole bunch of struggles. They were dead last in the NFL with 18 sacks. So Robert Quinn of the Bears had more by himself, 18 and a half. TJ Watt, 22. Yeah. And so, oh man, both sides of the ball, it was just a mess. Matt Ryan, he's still a decent to an above average on his best day, at quarterback, but I just feel like he didn't have, very much around him. The offensive line definitely left a lot to be desired. He finished top 5 in the NFL in sacks with 40 taken. And I know he's not the most mobile, but offensive line didn't really do him any favors. And so they did overachieve, but I think the biggest thing that kind of went wrong for the Falcons was really just a lack of talent.
Well, and especially when you talk about that lack of talent, I know we're going to get into free agency. They didn't retain much. If you look at the person who led the team in sacks was Dante Fowler with 4.5. He went to Dallas. The person with the next highest sacks, I believe you have it. I think it was 2 sacks. Shoot, I mean, if AJ Terrell's like in your top 5 of sacks, you're probably not doing anything right. I mean, it's the team itself was talent deficient. If you look, this is a completely different team that we're going to see in 2022 than we could have even thought of back in 2020, 2019. And those, no Matt Ryan, no Julio Jones. Obviously, they got rid of him. No Calvin Ridley for this entire year. If his suspension holds up, I'm not sure if he's appealing it or not. But this Atlanta Falcons team, for sure, is talent deficient. And if you look at last year, it's not like they were necessarily a whole lot of games. They were like losing close. They had a couple close losses, but opener lost 32-6. The second game, they lost 48-25. I know that one against actually, no, I was thinking of a different game against Tampa Bay, the one later in the year that was actually kind of, closer. But you look, I mean, they're losing 25-0 to New England. They're losing 43-3 to Dallas. I mean, they just were not in a whole lot of games. And especially, for a team like Atlanta, they always at least excelled when they were in those close games. But I think that, moving into, what happened in the offseason for them, did you like, how their free agency went? I know that it was very, very up and down. Again, as I said, they lost Dante Fowler, but they were able to, still do some things too. They were able to, in their offseason, they were able to lock up, I believe they locked up Jake Matthews. They locked up Grady Jarrett. We obviously talked about all the other stuff with, they traded away Matt Ryan and then immediately agreed with to terms with Marcus Mariota. They've signed some other, okay guys, but nothing too, nothing too impressive. What do you think?
Yeah, nothing crazy. Not much to talk about here. I think their biggest, most notable acquisition, through free agency was Marcus Mariota. I mean, you could talk about the re-signing of a Cordero Patterson, who had, 1,100 plus scrimmage yards last year, and so he definitely had a career year. But since we are talking about free agency and not guys that they were able to retain, there isn't too much to talk about. But I think with the Marcus Mariota, he does have experience playing under an Arthur Smith. He does have experience playing under that system. They have a little bit of chemistry going back to their days, in Tennessee. I know he did ultimately get, benched for Ryan Tannehill, so we'll see how that kind of comes around this time around in Atlanta. But yeah, in free agency, they didn't do too much. I mean, this team is fully embracing the rebuilding process. And when you're a team that's rebuilding, you don't go out there and sign a whole bunch of free agents. I think, they're really looking at this year's draft as a way to kind of add to their talent pool. But even then, they didn't do too much, but we'll probably touch on that just a little bit. So I guess if I had to give it a grade, I'd just say I'm kind of so bad. I'd give them a C.
Yeah, I think a C is perfect. They didn't do too much, but they didn't lose too much in free agency, really. I mean, obviously they traded away Matt Ryan, but and they lost their highest pass or their best pass rusher in Dante Fowler. But other than that, it's not like they were losing, key pieces. It's not like they lost like a Calvin Ridley in free agency. I do think that is a very next year, because I don't think, obviously, with having them ranked at 28, I don't think the Falcons are going to be very good next year. And I think that's not a hot take to say, but I think that we're going to be looking at them having another top 5 pick next year. And the fact that it seems like they're going to trade, I don't think it's a when, it's a when they're going to trade Calvin Ridley, because they had a deal for Calvin Ridley to wind up going to the Eagles. And then I guess the Falcons, out of good faith, backed out of the deal because they knew of the suspension that was coming for Calvin Ridley. But I would have to assume it was going to be, a first round pick. Probably, you'd have to assume probably what it was going to be, the number that they got for probably 18, whatever they gave up to the Titans to get AJ Brown. You got to think is probably the pick that was coming for Calvin Ridley, huh?
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, that's kind of been the going rate for receivers. I mean, we've seen in the past, Stephon Diggs was traded for a first rounder, and then I think it was a 4th or 5th and a 6th. We saw what's it called? I guess he didn't fetch a first rounder, though he should have, DeAndre Hopkins in that trade. Yeah. And yeah, we've seen swaps like that. So I kind of think that AJ Brown, another example. So yeah, I think that's definitely the going rate.
I mean, just all of those guys. I think honestly, the only two who didn't go for what they should have was DeAndre Hopkins, who went for a second, and then I think there was probably a pick swap in there, and then David Johnson as well, and then Amari Cooper went for a 5th. Which, looking back on it now, what a steal by the Browns. If looking back on that, let's move into the Falcons draft. I know you talked about it, that they didn't have a super duper flashy draft, but I know that obviously, if you get Drake London, who was the number 1 receiver in a bunch of people's eyes, that's always going to be good for you. They also got, a player. If we were live, it was me, Steezy, it was me, Dylan, and Squabo. We were live during the second round of the draft, and we were just hoping that Arnold Edebike was going to fall to Seattle. He did not. He got taken 2 picks earlier by the Atlanta Falcons. But other than that, not a whole lot of, they got Desmond Ritter in the 3rd round. We're going to touch on the quarterback situation in a little bit. What did you think of the draft, Steezy?
I thought overall they did a good job of addressing, holes. I'm glad they didn't reach for a quarterback, just because to get a Desmond Ritter in the 3rd round. I mean, I think he was the 2nd quarterback right off the board, because it was Kenny Pickett in the 1st round, no quarterbacks in the 2nd, and then finally at 74th, if I'm getting the number correct, Atlanta pounced, and they were able to get a Desmond Ritter. And I thought he was going to go in the 2nd round, if not late in the 1st. And so to be able to land him, they needed a quarterback, obviously. I'm not saying Marcus Mariota is going to be a scrub by any means, but they definitely needed a quarterback to kind of push, Marcus Mariota during training camp. Arnold Ebbitt Ebitiki. Excuse me, I'm definitely butchering his name. But yeah, like you said, like you alluded to, I mean, that's definitely a guy that Seattle was targeting. That's a guy that a lot of teams were targeting. I mean, I thought that he was shooting up draft boards, and I thought that he definitely made, push to potentially be drafted towards the end of the first round. And so to see him fall, where he did, Atlanta traded him for a reason. Seattle's picking right after them. And so, like I said, they did a good job, I think, of attacking needs. Desmond Ritter, Arnold Ebiketie, Drake London. I mean, we're going to touch on this in just a little bit, but their offense, they're building a basketball team. I mean, oh my gosh. You have Kyle Pitts already. You have now a Drake London, 6'4". Marcus Mariota himself is 6'4". And so I definitely like what they're doing offensively. And I wanted to bring this up earlier, but I think that one of the reasons why they were also hesitant in free agency was just the lack of spending money. I mean, Matt Ryan's dead cap hit was like, what, $40+ million?
Yeah.
I think it was a record of 44 million. And so that definitely hindered and kind of put a cap on their flexibility. And so just aside from the fact that they're a rebuilding football team, they just didn't have much to work with because of his contract, because they've been pushing his money, down the line. And so for them to be able to trade him, that's why earlier I said that they're finally embracing, the rebuilding process, because anytime you have a Matt Ryan, it's kind of hard to, especially, given his age, it's kind of hard to look at this team as having a direction, you know what I mean? And so, but going back to the draft, I thought that they did okay. Like you said, it wasn't super flashy. I like rookie running back Tyler Algiere, who they did pluck in the later rounds, which is another need, because I don't think that they have a complete workhorse / 3-down back at running back on the rotation or in the rotation. And so if I had to give this a grade, I'd give it a B-.
Yeah, I mean, you think when you look at, it's very tough to grade all these rebuilding teams drafts because they do get uber talented. They get a bunch of talent, but honestly, like, I mean, it's so hard to grade a draft, right after it happens, because you never know. Yeah. Like I remember, bringing it back, whatever, 3-4 off seasons ago, I'm sitting here, I wake up to the notifications from Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport. It's like the Packers spent how much on who? Zadarius Smith, like who, and then, but 2 years late, 2 years and 27 sacks later, it's, it's a fantastic offseason. So it's, it's very hard to do that. And, you can see that in free agency. You can see that in the draft as well. I know I was very upset with the Mcgarry pick at 12. I felt like you wanted to get someone who's going to produce more, but now you're looking at it and it's, I think PFF ranked him, their second best pass rusher under 25, just behind, ahead of Max Crosby and just behind of Nick Bosa. So it's like, I mean, you just never know until you really get there. But yeah, I'm expecting this team to for sure be picking in that, for sure, top 10, but maybe even that top 5 next year. After that, I think you look at the last offseason at coach, they went and they hired the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans and Arthur Smith. What did you think about that hire originally? And do you think that he could potentially be on the hot seat?
No, not at all. He's the furthest thing from there. I mean, just going back to your first question about what I thought of the hire initially, I thought it was a great hire. I mean, we saw what he did in Tennessee with Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, and that offense. I mean, against Baltimore in the playoffs and in that playoff run, or the playoff runs that they were able to go on with Arthur Smith at offensive coordinator. I mean, obviously it helps to have a Derrick Henry on your offense, but I think that with what he likes to do, he likes to focus on running the football. I think he's innovative. I think he is a genius. I think he's an offensive guru. He's an offensive mastermind. Last year was his first year as a head coach in the NFL. And like I said, he overachieved to the tune of 7-10. This Atlanta Falcons team, or that Atlanta Falcons team, had no business whatsoever finishing 7-10. Emmitt, like you talked about, some of those scores were just absolutely ghastly. I mean, oh my goodness. But I thought that Atlanta did kind of benefit from a soft schedule. They were going up against some of the weaker teams. I know one of their victories did come against, if I'm not mistaken, was it a Jacksonville? I know they played overseas over in London. I don't remember if that was Jacksonville or if that was Miami.
It was, I think it was Miami that they played against, and they won on the last second field goal.
Okay, right, yeah, because I remember watching that game, but they just had a bunch of games, and so all their wins were against just inferior competition. And I mean, obviously in the NFL, teams are a lot more, there's more parity, and so I'm not saying that these teams are just complete pushovers, but Atlanta, they definitely benefited from a soft schedule. But I think with Coach Smith, I mean, he hasn't really had a chance to have a roster that's his. He inherited a Matt Ryan. He inherited, the team that was kind of given to him before he kind of took over. And so to take that team to 7-10, I think he wants to have a chance to have his own team, and you can kind of judge him based off of what he does after that. And so now that we're starting to see, you know, pieces like Desmond Ritter, we're starting to see Tyler Algiere, we're starting to see Drake London, we're starting to see guys that he wants in, Marcus Mariota. And so I think it's better to kind of judge him after another year or two. But so far, I love what I saw from Arthur Smith. And dysfunctional franchises are usually the franchises that move on after just 1 year, especially at head coach. You know, you want more continuity. And I think with Arthur Smith, he's garnered, and he's definitely done enough to at least generate continuity. So I think that he's very far from the hot seat, and Atlanta would be fools to get rid of him just after a year.
Yeah, no, I definitely do agree with you. I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a little bit. And I do realize that there is some sort of, you know, I realize that there's a reason behind some of these things, but especially, you know, he comes from Tennessee where his big call is running the ball. And you look last year and they only had one time that, you know, they had a single rusher rush for over 80 yards, and that was Cordero Patterson against the Jaguars, and he went for 108. But other than that, next highest one was Patterson with 78, and he, you know, it did seem like it was a bit of a revolving door at running back, because I don't think they really wanted to fully commit to, you know, to Cordero Patterson as a running back. I think he's better served as, you know, almost playing that wide back role that we see with Deebo Samuel was playing. I think that do you find it at least a little bit concerning? And again, maybe it is just because, you know, he was on a very talent deficient roster and he didn't really have a true, almost like a number one running back. Like obviously, you know, Mike Davis, he's been kind of a journeyman running back around the NFL. I know he was with Seattle for a while, I'm pretty sure. So, you know, do you think that there should be any sort of concern that they weren't running the ball, as, you know, that was his sort of call to, you know, the reason he got the job is because of the running scheme he had in Tennessee?
I think there's a little bit of a cause for concern, just because when you have, you know, anytime you bring in a guy that has this perceived notion that, yeah, he's a mastermind in this regard or in that regard, then, yeah, you want to be able to see a guy like that at least be able to compensate, right, for what the team doesn't have. And so we didn't really see that. But at the same time, I mean, when we talk about this team being talent deficient, like this team was honestly in the 30s. And so if I were to compare them to the other teams as far as talent, they were probably 30th, 31st, or 32nd. Like, it was that bad. Cordero Patterson entering last year was third on the depth chart. He wasn't supposed to shine in the way that he did. So maybe, and I'm not saying I'm attributing all this to Arthur Smith, but what if Arthur Smith is behind that? Maybe he realized, like, yo, I don't have a ground game, so why not take Cordero Patterson, turn him into a chess piece and turn him into this wide back? So maybe he's responsible, at least for a good chunk of what Cordero Patterson was able to do. So I thought that what he was able to do with what he had, I thought it was more than all right. Just because I talked about the offensive line. Not only were they deficient in pass protection, but they just couldn't open any holes. Like, every time I watched this team play last year, they couldn't open up any sort of holes. Like, guys were getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage as soon as they received the handoff. And so I thought with what he had, he did a decent job.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to win with a roster that's talent deficient. And again, I know that this is not apples to apples, but I know that the one thing I was looking for when the Packers hired Matt LaFleur in 2019 is because his big call was, again, the running game. He came from Tennessee as well. And he came from the Sean McVay tree, you know, the Kyle Shanahan tree, whatever you want to call it. I was looking for some sort of success running the ball. And I believe in that season, Aaron Jones had 19 total touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. So you saw something, you saw some sort of thing, and maybe that is what it is, that we're seeing with Cordero Patterson, and maybe they're able to, turn that into something. But this year, I don't know. It's going to be incredibly, it's going to be tough to watch this year, I think, especially with what we're about to talk about, their quarterback room. You look, and what you're choosing between, it's not the worst, but it's not the best. You're looking at, regardless which guy you go with, you're probably in the bottom 5, 7, 8 in terms of quarterbacks in the league, starting quarterbacks at least. So obviously they drafted Desmond Ritter at the 74th pick in the 3rd round this year. They signed Marcus Mariota to a 2-year, I believe it was 2-year. Is it a 16 per year deal, or is it a 16 total deal? I think it was total.
Total. Yeah.
16 total deal. What should the Falcons do at quarterback? I know that I'm more inclined to probably go with the veteran, especially because I don't think the last time that we've really seen these like late round, or I guess mid to late round quarterbacks, come in and start their first game. Generally, it was on accident, like we saw with Seattle with Russell Wilson. Obviously, he beat out Matt Flynn, And then even, with my dad's Dallas Cowboys, Tony Romo got injured in the third preseason game against the Seahawks. So Dak Prescott got thrown into the starting job. They were just very unique situations. And I guess, again, maybe we are looking at a situation like, a Matt Flynn, Russell Wilson situation where, you see the veteran who finally get some sort of money. And then, the rookie quarterback who you weren't expecting to come in and compete for that job really does compete for that job. But right now, obviously, we aren't watching practice. But what would you do at quarterback if you were the Atlanta Falcons?
Emmitt, I'm subscribing to the same notion that I'd rather go with a veteran, at quarterback, especially because he has that experience under that system, because he does have, that chemistry with an Arthur Smith. This is Marcus Mariota's job to lose. And so if we go into training camp and we're hearing rumors or we're hearing things about Desmond Ritter, potentially, making Marcus Mariota the backup, and if he's looking like the starter, then that's going to look really, really bad on Marcus Mariota. I mean, I know part of the reason why he got benched the first time around in Tennessee was because he was injured. And in his place, Ryan Tannehill was just playing so phenomenally that it was just like, you know what? Like, he's playing so well that you're just going to have to come off the bench. And ultimately, that led to his departure. He spent the last couple of years as a backup to Derek Carr in Vegas. But this is his job to lose. I mean, he knows the system. Just like in Seattle, Geno Smith kind of has that early edge, right, over a Drew Lock. Not only does Marcus Mariota have that early edge, but I think he's more talented quarterback at this stage in his career. Not only that, he brings another element that Desmond Ritter does not, and that means he's a true dual-threat quarterback. Now, Desmond Ritter can run when he needs to. He can scramble when he needs to, but I don't look at him as a true dual-threat running back. And with the Arthur Smith, we talked about how innovative he is. We talked about how much of a genius he is offensively. When you have a dual threat quarterback, you're able to do more offensively. And I think with Arthur Smith, he is coming off a 7-10 season. I understand he knows that he's in a rebuilding situation, but you want to pick up some W's, and you're going to pick up W's by starting the veteran who has experience, under your system, who's played in the NFL for a number of years already. He is the former number 2 overall pick. And so I think this is his last chance. This is his last opportunity to really show what he can do as a starter in the NFL. And I think Marcus Mariota definitely has a chip on his shoulder, and he's willing to prove the entire NFL wrong. And so if I'm the Atlanta Falcons, if I'm Arthur Smith, I'm definitely starting Marcus Mariota until, look, if he gets injured, then okay, you bring in a Desmond Ritter. If he struggles, then okay, you bring in a Desmond Ritter. But for me, I'm looking for W's, and that means Marcus Mariota is my starting quarterback come week 1.
Yeah, and I think especially if you look at the fact that unless you're told, because again, this is the NFL where anything can happen. We saw Brian Flores have 3 straight non-losing seasons for the Dolphins, I'm pretty sure, and get canned. You know what I mean? And he shouldn't have gotten fired. I think we can all agree with that. Or he should at least have a head coaching job in the NFL. But you look, unless he's been specifically told, hey, you can go 0-17 this year and your job's going to be fine. Unless he's been told that, you got to start the veteran. This entire business, the entire NFL, I guess, unless you're the Cowboys, because they'll kind of get their money, regardless, it's determined by wins and losses. And so you got to get as many wins as you can. I think Marcus Mariota is going to be, he's going to be the best guy to get that done. And especially with you look at, Arthur Smith, again, he came from Tennessee, and a lot of his success came off of that running game, but not just with Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill could move. He could move. And so, and obviously I think Marcus Mariota is a little bit more mobile, and he's for sure faster, but I think he's also a little bit more mobile, a little bit more, has a little bit of wiggle to him more than Ryan Tannehill does. And again, so I think that you're going to look to see that a lot, look to see a lot of Marcus Mariota runs along with Cordero Patterson, in that backfield. But, you talked about it and you said, at least for right now, you would go with, you'd go with Marcus Mariota, but obviously it's hard to just, step over the, the 3rd round quarterback. Do you think that Desmond Ritter potentially, do you think he could be the guy for the Falcons, or do you think he's just going to be, in this kind of this wash of guys who get taken in like that 2nd, 3rd round, who just never really amount to anything, or, maybe they're, they wind up being a career backup, or, one and done, then a practice squad guy, or what are you thinking? What are the vibes you're getting on Desmond Ritter for the Falcons?
So, Emma, real quick, one more thing I wanted to add about the whole Marcus Mariota situation. I just feel like with Marcus Mariota, he's also a guy that you're not going to lose football games with. He's not going to turn the football over. He's not going to throw interceptions. He's not going to lose you the game. And so I think with a presence like that, we talked about W's, and you want a guy who's not going to turn the football over. And so I think that's another line of thinking that I wanted to add. Now, as it pertains to Desmond Ritter, it's hard to tell. Like you talked about, OTAs are really just starting to get underway. We do have mandatory mini camps coming up soon. Training camp is coming up soon. And so I think until then, it's really hard to say. But if I had to answer, because the question is right in front of me, I'm going to say yeah. And the only reason why is because at Cincinnati, he wasn't the most athletic, guy. He isn't the flashiest guy, right? But every single year he improved. Every single year he showed maturity. Every single year, he showed signs of him being a great leader. And he's only gotten, to the level where he's at now as a leader because every single year he used it as an opportunity to improve. And so I think with the Desmond Ritter, I mean, you have Drake London, you have Kyle Pitts, you have a wide back in a Cordero Patterson, you have an innovative mind at head coach. I think he has the tools, around him to succeed. And because we did see him improve each and every single year, I think that's going to happen, in the NFL as well. I mean, it's crazy to think that he's around our age because he looks so old and mature. I mean, oh my gosh, I'm not trying to attack the man, but I definitely love what I'm seeing, the maturity. There are definitely a couple of things he needs to work on. I think he's not the most accurate quarterback. I think as far as his ball placement goes, that also leaves a lot to be desired. But I think, yeah, he can be the quarterback of the future just because he has so much to surround him. And because of what I saw from a year-to-year basis, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I again, it's always so tough because quarterback is like the one position where it's like it almost feels impossible to draft. Like the only way for a fact you're getting you're going to get a star quarterback is going to be either if you're picking number 1 overall, and even then we've seen plenty of swings and misses. We've seen Jared Goff go number 1 overall. You know what I mean? Like Jamarcus Russell. We've seen plenty of people go number 1 overall. But like it almost feels like the only, like home runs have been, where they go number 1 and you're like, oh, this guy's going to be a star. Elway, Manning, Lawrence, and Luck, I think are probably the only 4 who you look and they go number 1. So it's so tough to grade quarterbacks, especially when, we haven't seen them at the pro level yet. But I'm going to lean towards yes. Again, especially because I don't think, me personally, I think we've kind of seen Marcus Mariota's ceiling for the most part. And I think that's, I think he can lead to or get a team to a playoffs, win a playoff game. Maybe. I mean, I know we saw him beat the Chiefs a couple of years ago on, the pass he threw to himself. So I think it's just so tough. But I do think that, especially with, because I think the third, if you get drafted in the 3rd round, I believe it's a 4-year contract that you get. So he's going to just by the contract, he's going to outlive Marcus Mariota by 2 years. But again, it really wouldn't shock me, if they're in this situation next year and they're picking 2 and they have CJ Stroud or, if they have CJ Stroud or if they have, Bryce Young in front of them. It wouldn't shock me, if they're going to be looking at that and, licking their chops thinking, okay, we could really get one of these guys, especially if you look who we have behind us or behind them. I have, the Texans, obviously, I think that they could use a quarterback. The Jaguars, I think that they're set at quarterback with Trevor Lawrence. I'm a huge Trevor Lawrence guy. I know that obviously as of right now, he didn't look too good last year, but I think that was also such a talent deficient team, as kind of all these, teams are. I think the Lions are one of those teams who is moving up, but I think that they are another team who could potentially use a quarterback, but they've just been loading their talent up on, with loading their roster up with talent over the past couple of years. So it wouldn't shock me if they passed on a quarterback. So you could definitely see a quarterback sitting there, at 4-3 for the Falcons for sure. Getting into this year for the Falcons, who do you think are some players to watch? This could be anything for you. If you're thinking, 2nd-year player, you're looking to make a jump, someone who's on the hot seat potentially. I know that obviously, I'm expecting Kyle Pitts to take a jump. He even had 1,000 yards last year, and maybe this is just a Matt Ryan thing, and maybe, just the lack of touchdowns, the one touchdown. Because we saw that's the biggest thing with Julio Jones, right? He will have, he'll put up, a 200, 300 yard game, and you're looking just, oh, really? Like one touchdown, how do you have 15 catches and only one touchdown? But yeah, so who are you expecting to either, take that jump, or who's a player that you have, kind of on the hot seat for the Falcons?
Quickly, I just want to add, I think with Atlanta and how they, run things offensively, not only is that a factor, but I think just the lack of trips to the red zone. I mean, this team is never really, in that money area, in that red zone area, right? And so because they don't have the opportunities, I think that's one of the reasons why we've seen touchdown numbers low. And now when they do have those opportunities, when Julio was on the team, they just almost never used them in the red zone, which was always very puzzling to me. They'd always run jumbo sets up front, and they'd kind of, target the tight ends and look to run the football. And so that was always perplexing, to say the least. But going back to your question, Emmitt, for me, I think a guy, and I talked about this earlier, but rookie running back Tyler Algiere. Now, I don't remember what round he was taken. I think it might have been the 5th round. And I did tweet about this a couple of weeks ago, but I think he deserves a lot more love, especially in the fantasy football world. I mean, we did see a wide back or a scat back like a Cordell Patterson erupt for 1,100 plus scrimmage 100 yards last year. But then again, he's not a full-time running back. He's not a complete running back. He's not a complete 3-down in between the tackles type running back. And so because of that, I think there's an opportunity for Tyler Algiere. And we've seen with rookie running backs in the past, it does not matter what round they were drafted in. It doesn't matter what sort of situation they kind of jump in. It doesn't matter sometimes what the offensive line looks like in front of them. Sometimes we see these rookie running backs just come out of nowhere and just put up 1,000+ yards. You know what I mean? Now, Atlanta does have a Damian Williams, who is a proven veteran, who has won a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs. But then again, he's more of a complimentary back. And so I think with the Tyler Algiere, he's 5'11", 220+ pounds. I think he's going to be their bruiser. I think he's going to be their end zone guy. And I think he has underrated ability as a receiver out of the backfield. And so I think if Arthur Smith falls in love with what he brings to the table, not only in fantasy, but for the benefit of the Atlanta Falcons, the football team itself, I think Tyler Algiere could be a steal for them. And I can't wait to see what he does. I've definitely kind of targeted him in a lot of my drafts. And so, I think for you, Tyler Algiere, definitely keep that name in mind. I don't know if you want me to touch on the rest of my players, but that's definitely a guy that I'm looking out for.
Go for it. I mean, I'm gonna talk real quick about a guy like, and this obviously it seems a little bit like duh, but I think we're really gonna see, and I think it has been, because you see a lot of comparisons between him and Trayvon Diggs. And that's going to be AJ Terrell. I'm expecting AJ Terrell to take that step into, not into from being, kind of like the underground sort of, like, everyone sort of, everyone who's like really locked in with football knows how good he is, to being up there with a Jalen Ramsey and a Jair Alexander, into being a, superstar bona fide number 3, or number 1 corner. Obviously, he is that for the Falcons, and I think it's only going to get better with them bringing in a guy like a Casey Hayward. I've always loved Casey Hayward. I never understood why the Packers got rid of him. But yeah, so I think AJ Terrell is a guy I'm expecting to. Obviously, he's fantastic. So I don't think he has to take a step to be super productive. But I'm expecting him to take a step from being a star to being a superstar.
I just wanted to add to that, because AJ Terrell is also one of the guys that I listed, and one of the reasons why is because, you talked about it. He was an all-pro second teamer last year, one of the best cover corners in all of football. He had 80+ tackles. He definitely didn't show any sort of hesitancy as far as run support. But in year 1, he was ranked as one of the worst corners in the league, and he made such an astronomical leap in year 2. I'm just curious to see, and I think it'll be very fascinating. And I don't expect him to take a step back. I'm not saying he's going to go back to what he was in year 1, but I'm just curious to see. Is he going to make that superstar leap? Like he made that leap to being a star, but to be able to be a superstar, you have to be able to maintain that consistency year in and year out. And now some guys, they just evolve every single year and elevate every single year. And so I'll be real curious to see if he takes that next step into being a superstar. But for me, and I touched on this earlier, the entire Falcons offense, because I think they're fielding a basketball team. Marcus Mariota, 6'4", Cordero Patterson, 6'2", Drake London, 6'4", Kyle Pitts, 6'6", Brian Edwards, whom they traded for on the Raiders a couple of weeks ago, 6'3". Auden Tate, a depth receiver, is 6'5". And so this team, you would think that they're rolling now a starting 5, right? All these heights, the shortest guy that I listed was 6'2". And so I'm just real curious to see what they do. I think with how they want to run things or what they want to do offensively, we're definitely going to see, hopefully, these guys utilized in the red zone, because we haven't seen that in years past. Now, hopefully they can start making trips to the red zone so they can give these guys opportunities. But I think in the red zone, this team is going to be absolutely deadly as far as jump balls go, as far as being able to throw the ball down the field. I don't think they're going to have a problem with that at all. They just need a reliable ground game. But I do have another player I will touch on in just a second. You probably have another play you want to talk about. But for me, so far, it's AJ Terrell, Tyler Algiere, and then that entire Falcons offense, just because, like I can't stop saying this, but it resembles that of a basketball team.
Yeah, it's so tough. I keep saying this, but it really is for these lower teams, because obviously I think that they have a bunch of talent on their team. A guy I'm looking for who I think could 100% be on the hot seat is a guy who I got to watch for, I think it was either 3 or 4 years at Washington. And that's Caleb Mcgarry, their right tackle. I have not heard a damn thing about him coming out of Atlanta. Seriously, I mean, I have not heard a whole bunch about him, and I don't know whether I believe he's had some injury issues if I'm not if I'm not mistaken. But they took him in the first round, back in 2019, and we've heard practically nothing from him. I mean, I'm expecting him to. This is a make or break season for him because I'm not sure if they picked up his 5th-year option or anything. I'm not sure. I don't think they did.
Maybe another year.
No, because the Packers just picked up same draft class. They picked up Savage and Gary's.
Oh, oops.
Yeah, Caleb. Let me see. I mean, I think he's a guy who you got to expect. Again, if you spend a first-round pick on a player, you expect. Yeah, he's appeared in 30 games with 29 starts since 2019. And yeah, in 2020 he missed a couple of games, but yeah, I'm expecting him, and this isn't for him to take some sort of leap. He's one of those players who's on the hot seat for sure.
No doubt. I mean, I remember him coming out of UW. I was just like, "Oh, this guy's an absolute monster." I mean, what is he? 6'7", 6'8"?
Yeah,
yeah. I
mean, they declined his 5th-year option.
They declined it. So they're gonna make him earn that next contract. Yep. I'm not mad at it. I think that's definitely a great pick because Emmitt, I was wondering the same thing. I mean, what happened to this guy coming out of UW, drafted in the first round? I thought he was gonna be one of the premier talents at right tackle. And he does have they do have a bookend, right? They have Jake Matthews and a Caleb Mcgarry. So you would expect his offensive line to be a lot better than what they've kind of put up these last couple of years. And so it has been disappointing to say the least.
Yeah. And then you said you had one more guy.
Yeah, just Desmond Ritter. I mean, we've really touched on him a lot already. I just think it's very intriguing because, like I also talked about, he has all this talent in front of him: Drake Lennon, Kyle Pitts, Cordell Patterson, Tyler Algiere, and then you have a head coach in Arthur Smith who is innovative, who is somewhat of a genius, on the offensive side of the ball. And so, seeing as how he's improved each and every single year, I'm just curious to see if he's going to be able to wrestle and take that starting job away from Marcus Mariota. Is he going to outplay, his veteran counterpart like a Russell Wilson did a Matt Flynn? Is he gonna have to come in because of an injury? Because we've seen in the past Marcus Mariota, he has been injury prone. That's actually what kind of knocked him out of that starting job in Tennessee because of injuries. And so we'll see what happens, but I do think that he is in a position to succeed.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Now here's the fun part. We are nearing the end of the episode. I think we have just this last topic. You talked about last year, their schedule was fairly easy. They got the NFC East and AFC East as the divisions that they are going to play. They did not get it so easy this year. They play the NFC West and they play the AFC North. Along with that, I'm pretty sure if I saw it in here somewhere, I'm taking another look at it. I thought they played Buffalo as well. Does not appear that they play Buffalo, but they have a rough schedule, and not to mention their division. Obviously, I think that they still have like one of the weaker divisions, but you have to play Tampa twice a year. And I don't think Tom Brady, as he's been the quarterback of Tampa, I don't think he's lost to the Falcons yet. I think he's beat them pretty handily all 4 times. The Saints are always going to be super tough. I know that their quarterback situation is a little bit difficult, but I know that they're going to have to for sure. Those are another 2 tough games, especially with you see all the talent that the Saints have. I cannot wait to talk about the Saints. They're going to be. I think they're one of the teams that you've had as one of these sleeper teams, and I think that they're moving from that sleeper category. They're becoming a game that's getting circled on a lot of team schedules. But Steezy, I need to get a record prediction from you. They have a tough schedule this year, as I just laid out in front of you. What do you think they're going to go?
Falcon fans, if you're listening, I highly suggest turning this off right now because it's going to get ugly. I mean, Emmitt, I was scouring through their schedule and brother, I had a hard time just cobbling together 4 or 5 wins. I mean, I wanted to be generous. I wanted to be nice. I know it is the NFL. Any given Sunday, we've seen talent deficient teams, kind of overachieve in years past. Last year's team overachieved, but I can't ignore some of these things. They've downgraded at quarterback. Outside of Arnold Ebiketie, they still haven't had much of a pass rush. And this team, don't forget, had a paltry, a measly, a very lowly 18 sacks last year. That is just bad. It does not matter what sort of talent you have on any side of the ball. If you don't have any sort of pass rush, if you can't generate any sort of pressure and getting after the opposing team's quarterback, I don't care what you have. I don't care what weapons you have. I don't care if you have a basketball team on offense. Defensively, I mean, they've been Casper for the last couple of years. They've just kind of disappeared. And so that hasn't gotten better. Look, and now that they're fully embracing the rebuilding process, there are going to be a lot of growing pains. Arthur Smith went 7-10 last year. I don't think he should expect to do that again. Now he's going to do his best to strive for that, right? We talked about him, how he should start the veteran quarterback, but that schedule is, oh my gosh. Like it's just an absolute gauntlet. And so I don't even know if this is being generous, but if I had to put a record on it, Emmitt, I don't think they're competing for a top 5 pick. I think they're going to be in contention for the number 1 overall pick.
Wow.
4-13 is what I'm gonna give them. 4-13.
Yeah, I can't imagine they do much better than that. To be quite honest with you, just looking at especially down the stretch, I think when you say competing for that number 1 overall pick, here are their last 5 games. In week 13, they have a week 14 bye. They play Pittsburgh, and I'm expecting Pittsburgh to be good this year. I think I took them to win the division this year, if I'm not mistaken, on the Bolt.
Oh,
I think I did, didn't I?
I definitely missed that episode because I would have. What?
I think I took Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. Here, I can pull it up. I'll pull it up. I'm pretty sure I took Pittsburgh to win the division.
With who at quarterback? Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph?
Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. Wow.
Let me see. Maybe I had them second, but I'm pretty sure I picked them to win the division. I'm looking. Yeah, I have Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Cleveland. I just think that roster, you look and they've put so many weapons around Kenny Pickett that it's hard for them to falter. They have Najee Harris, first round running back. They have Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and they just had my favorite wide receiver in the draft, and George Pickens. The offensive line is obviously, it's going to be a problem. It is going to be a problem. And I do want to preface me saying, the Steelers win the division by, depending on that Deshaun Watson, how that winds up panning out. If you told me at the beginning of the year, any one of those 4 teams won the division, I'd be like, yeah, it makes sense. That's going to be I think that we look at the NFC West in terms of, they have so much, firepower. I think that the AFC North is probably the most competitive division. Because you don't see these teams who have you're not competing. It's not a whole bunch of superstar talent. You have a bunch of teams who are good. I think the AFC West, I think you have some good teams. I think you have some great teams, as we've discussed. But I think all of these teams are extremely good and extremely solid. And it wouldn't shock me if all of them, pending the Deshaun Watson outcome, winds up, with a winning record. But yeah, as I was saying before I got sidetracked, they have Pittsburgh in week 13, then they have a bye, then at New Orleans, at Baltimore, and then their last 2 games of the season are versus Arizona at home and then Tampa Bay at home. And that sounds to me like 5 straight losses. I don't know about you, but that sounds like 5 straight.
Yeah, no, that's yeah. I mean, what else can I add? I mean, sheesh, that's
and again, if you look at that, they only play in that entire stretch. They only play 1 AFC North team and 1 AFC West team. That doesn't even, NFC West and AFC North team. That you're not even counting San Francisco or the Rams or Cleveland or that's 2 because they have Baltimore in there as well. But I think it's going to be a brutal season for the Falcons, sadly. I don't have a whole bunch of loyalty to the Falcons or anything. I do have a Falcons Brett Favre jersey, but that's not because I like the Falcons, because I like Brett Favre. But yeah, it's going to be a rough season.
Yeah, Emmitt, I mean, you talked about their last 5 games of the season. I looked at their first 5 games, and I don't know if they're escaping their first 5 games with a W. I mean, even their first 5 games of the season is a gauntlet to start off with. And so it's just, like I said, it was so hard for me to kind of pick. Yeah, I know they're for sure going to get a W against the Panthers. They play them twice. They're kind of in that same class. Actually, no, Carolina's definitely more talented overall. But yeah, no, it's going to be hard to really circle W's on this team. But like you alluded to, I mean, they do have the draft, next year's draft, to look forward to. So we'll see what happens there.
Hey, they might not do a whole lot of winning, but they're going to win a high draft pick. That's that.
There you go.
That's what they're going to be playing for this year. Steezy, I've loved having you on as always. You know, we're gonna see each other at 3:30 for the Bolt at Squabo Says on YouTube. Steezy, go ahead and, you know, anything you want to plug, go for it.
Hey, my man, Emmitt, this was fun, bro. We definitely need to do this a lot more often. I need to bring you on to the show, on my show. And so definitely look forward to that. Hopefully sometime in the coming weeks. But, to all the listeners out there at the C Team Pod on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, if you aren't already subscribed, I don't know what you're doing. You tripping, man. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to show some love, drop a like, help us run them up. And so definitely be sure to show them some love. Follow us on The Bolt on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, where we post weekly clips. So if you don't end up, or if you can't for whatever reason, watch the show every Tuesday, 3:30 p.m. Pacific time on at Squabus's YouTube channel. Definitely be sure to look to our Instagram and Twitter, TikTok. We'll be posting clips and whatnot. And you can find me at Steezy A Smith, SteezyASmith. I do have an NBA Finals Roundtable coming soon. I do have more Seahawks draft profiles coming soon. So if any of those sound interesting, be sure to hit that subscribe.
For sure. And again, if I already have all the Steezy's links down in the description on this live stream. So if you guys, don't want to do all that typing, all you got to do, see more on the description and go ahead, follow him up. He's fantastic. We've known each other for a long time. He's actually the one that got me or helped me get into more of the sports writing. He was my sports editor at the Highline Thunderword back in those days. He even has, he has the old basketball, one of his pieces right above his shoulder. Mm-hmm. If I'm not mistaken, is that your Kobe piece on the bottom?
It is.
I think that's my favorite piece you ever did. That was awesome. That was my favorite piece.
My favorite piece as well. Man, thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, and so he got me into writing. I do write now for the Dairyland Express, which is by fans.
Hey, that was a great article.
Fan-sided. Thank you. I've written a couple. I have a new one coming, and I'm very excited on it. I'll tease it here a little bit. There was CBS Sports posted this stat a couple of days ago, and it was talking about quarterbacks who had their most, how many times have they thrown 10 or more interceptions in a season? And so, you had Brett Favre threw 10 or more interceptions in a season 18 times.
Ooh.
Peyton Manning, and I think it was Peyton Manning and John Elway did it 16 times. Brady's done it 12 times. I think it was Breeze and Marino did it 14 times. Aaron Rodgers has only done it twice. However, the last time he did it was, back in 2010 when they won the Super Bowl. So that prompts a lot of replies of is the reason that, is Aaron Rodgers' ball security, or I guess, him being too secure with the ball and not taking risk, is that the reason he doesn't have more championship rings? And I dive into that. My answer, if you guys know anything about me, my answer is going to be no, for a couple of reasons. One, because I think turnovers are bad, and two, Aaron Rodgers isn't careful with the ball. He threads the needle better than anyone can thread the needle.
Yeah, he's not playing scared. Like, there's a difference. Some quarterbacks, and no disrespect, no shade, but Alex Smith, for example, you see the lack of turnovers, but it's because he's not making, high risk throws. He's not making a whole bunch of crazy wow type throws, right? He's not a gunslinger. The rest of those guys that you mentioned outside of Aaron Rodgers, those are all gunslingers. But Emmitt, the reason why I pointed at you is because I think I know that touchdown to INT ratio. It was 28-11, right?
For
Rodgers. The last time he threw double-digit INTs?
Yep, I believe so.
There you go.
Yeah. No, I
don't know why I remember that, but
no, but I can't wait to dive into that. I've written the first half of it already. I'm gonna, after this show, I'm gonna prepare for the next two shows, and then after I'm done with those, I'm gonna crack out the article. Hopefully, it should be out tomorrow. I'm very excited. Again, thank you very much, Steezy, for joining us. Or for joining me. We're going to be without Dallas for the next couple, and we're for sure going to work the schedule around. We're going to find a way to get Dallas and you on here for when we have the Seahawks. I'm not going to spoil what spot they're at, but they're coming soon. That's all I'll say. They're coming soon. Hey, I will say that they're above 25. That's all I'll say. They're above 25.
That's fair. That's fair. Because I've seen media outlets putting Seattle at 27, 26, 28. And so to me, that's just disrespectful.
That's where I would have had him, but Dallas and we had to have some give and take on it. I had the I think he wanted the Jags at 32, and I was saying no, or the Lions I think is one of the ones we got into. He wanted the Lions higher, I wanted the Lions lower. So then we flip flop. So we got the Seahawks higher when I think they should be lower, but I cannot wait to get into that. That's going to be a fantastic conversation. Obviously, we're going to have. We haven't even talked about it, but we're going to have Steezy A Smith on for that one. We have to. So yeah. But thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.